Welcome my friends. Welcome to the Quixote News Network. Today is a special day for us. Not only do we have a great guest for you, this will be my very first interview. Yes, I am a bit nervous, but our guest is an old pro at all this, so I am sure that everything will go smoothly. Our guest is Bruce Gagnon, coordinator of the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space. Bruce will be getting here any second. Oh, I think this is Bruce now. Hello my amigo. Did you experience smooth travels to get here today?
Well, actually, it was a bit rocky, but I made it. So glad to be here. I appreciate the interview.
After the American-backed Israeli attacks against Iran, Iran struck back at Israel many missiles and drones. Israel has never had to suffer such a strong military response to its brutal genocide of the Palestinian people.
It's all part of this greater Israel thing that the Western colonial powers want to protect the resource extraction in that region. You know, right now, China gets most of its oil from Iran. Well, it's a war on BRICS. And so they're going after the BRICS countries with these various wars and encirclements and everything else they're doing. So this is what's really driving it. Now, the Iron Dome is supposed to protect Israel after Israel launches as some people are calling it, a Pearl Harbor attack on Iran, a preemptive strike, illegal under international law. And so what's happening? The Iron Dome was eviscerated by decoys that Iran launches, by drones, and just by flooding the zone. So much stuff coming in, they can't get it all. And on top of that, hypersonics, which are able to fly around and under and everything else at super speeds, super Mach speeds, and get through this stuff. So my sense of the Iron Dome, and I think you'll understand this very well because you know about windmills, the blades of the windmills are falling off. It doesn't work. So this is the problem that Israel has today. They have spent so much money on the military, and they've relied on the United States technologies and research capabilities. And what we're learning is the United States is not the best producer of military hardware. It's all about profit with them. They cut a lot of corners. They don't really maybe have the best technicians and scientists that are working on it. But as you stack them up now, the United States is coming way down the list in terms of capabilities. And so that means Israel is too. But I want to also say one more thing, because there's an American direct connection. The U.S., number one, helped pay for it, the R&D on it, the research and development. And then they tested it at Kodiak Island, Alaska, at a launch facility there that the people of Kodiak Island opposed. I went there. I spoke to half the town. The mayor introduced me. They were all opposed to it, but they were promised that there'll never be any military launches. It's all going to be civilian. Well, as it turns out, one more lie. They've all been military launches. And in fact, they brought in these manufactured metal buildings and set them up as housing for the Israeli troops that were there on Kodiak firing off these tests.
Okay, Bruce. So tell me now about America's Golden Dome weapon system. Canada is now thinking about taking part in Trump's so-called Golden Dome. The biggest war profiteers, their political puppets, and their servants in the corporate media are spinning disinformation about this weapon system. But actually, Bruce, this big golden plan will be effective as a pretext for stealing tons of precious gold from American and Canadian taxpayers. Those greedy war-profiteering companies are going to make a really big bloody killing from this scheme.
Trump has created this idea of building a golden dome over America to protect us from the evil, vicious nuclear attack that they expect will soon be coming from Russia and China, and maybe Iran and North Korea and whoever else doesn't like us wonderful American people. Well, as it turns out, it's crazy. It's expensive. It'll never work. All you got to do is flood the zone with decoys and many, many, many nuclear missiles, and this stuff won't work. It won't catch it all. It's an illusion. And it's a great welfare program for the poorest people in our country, the military-industrial complex. Trump this year in 2025 wants $25 billion to get it started. And he said it'll be very cheap and very effective. But the Congressional Budget Office has already said it's going to cost anywhere between $550 billion and several trillion. So in that range, over 20 years, at a time when the United States has $37 trillion in debt. How are we going to do that? Cut Social Security, cut Medicare, cut Medicaid, cut environmental funding, cut education. Just don't fix the roads and bridges anymore. That's the way we're going to pay for it. Complete, utter insanity. So this is the program that is modeled on Ronald Reagan's early 80s SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars, that didn't work either. And they spent $400 billion from Reagan's time up to the current day on research and development for this program, and it's got them nothing that is working. So that's the plan, and we're out there trying to beat it as best we can. We need help. We need people to saddle up and ride with us to beat this insanity, this welfare program for the war machine.
President Trump says that this Golden Dome weapons program is purely defensive. But Bruce, that can't really be true, can it? It sounds like a bunch of fake news to me. America's golden weapons are actually part of an offensive first strike system. What is the real truth about these expensive weapons? Are they really all about defense? Or is that a big fat load of stinking bullcrap that the propaganda ministry is spreading around in order to steal tons of money from the unsuspecting public?
I think it's a very important question because I believe that this is really what it's all about. It's about offense. Every year at the U.S. Space Command, now called the Space Force, by the way, they have a computer war game called the Red Team versus the Blue Team. And in that computer war game, they launch a first strike attack against China and Russia. And they use space technology, interceptors in space, the X-37 military space plane that flies down from orbit, drops an attack on Russia and China. It's shown that it can stay in space for a whole year at a time. It's like a super drone. And then after this first strike attack, they try to take out in this attack, they try to take out Russian and Chinese underground nuclear missiles, land-based nuclear missiles, air bombers on the runways, and also their nuclear submarine force. So they do all kinds of the ways to try to take all that out. But then inevitably, Russia and China have some remaining nuclear retaliatory capability that they fire in a counterstrike. And it is then that these systems would be used to pick off the counterattack by Russia and China, giving the U.S. a quote-unquote successful first strike attack. So this is indeed, Golden Dome is part of this first strike attack system. They know that they can't knock everything out, but if you hit them first, and you knock out a lot of their stuff, then reduce their ability to hit you back, then you might be able to do it. You might be able to pick off that retaliatory strike.
As a guy who has been a hardcore peace activist for more than 40 years, you have been involved in many campaigns against social injustice and war. My amigo, could you please summarize for viewers some of the many highlights of your life as a peace activist?
Well, I grew up in a military family. And in fact, I tried to join the Air Force during the Vietnam War, but flunked my induction physical. Can you imagine? I had to get a waiver to get in when everybody else of good sense was trying to stay out because of the war. But anyway, after my training, I was sent to a base in California that was an airlift base for the war in Vietnam. GIs would come there, fly to Vietnam, they'd return with body bags. I grew up in a military family, so I was a young Republican for Nixon in 68. I was a real hardliner. I was supporting the war, but being at that base changed my life. And as it turned out, my first roommate was one of the organizers in the GI resistance movement at Travis Air Force Base in California. Changed me completely. Plus, they were smoking marijuana in the room when they'd have meetings at night. I'm sitting in a corner thinking they're communists, but what do I know? Anyway, they changed my life. I got out of the Air Force. I wanted to do something good. I didn't know what it was. I was going to the University of Florida and realizing that it was just like the military. And then one day there was a knock on my door and I was invited to come and help get the lettuce out of the school cafeteria in support of the United Farm Workers Union in California that was boycotting lettuce. So I went. Soon they offered me a job. I quit college. I became an organizer with the United Farm Workers Union in Florida, organizing fruit pickers. So there we go. From there, I moved on to various social justice organizing. And then in 1982, there was this huge protest on June 12th, 1982, in New York City. About 1 million people were there protesting against nuclear weapons. I was watching it on TV, on the government C-SPAN channel. I watched the whole rally, the speakers, and the whole works. And afterwards, when it was all over, they cut away to a right-wing conference where Ronald Reagan's head of SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars, was speaking. And after his talk in the Q&A, somebody asked him a question. Hey, General Graham, they say there's almost 1 million people in New York today protesting against nuclear weapons. Aren't you worried about that? He said, no, I think it's fantastic because we're moving into space. They don't have a clue. Let them keep doing what they're doing. And my mind immediately flashed back to my youth, watching all those cowboy movies. And remember that slogan, head them off at the pass. And I thought, oh my God, I got to get on this. I lived in Orlando, Florida, less than an hour away from the Space Center at Cape Canaveral. So I began educating myself about the issue. And the next year, 83, I went to work for the Florida Coalition for Peace and Justice. And I started organizing protests at the Space Center. Many of them over the years, 1,000 people, 5,000 people, all kinds of protests over many years. And that's where it led me into this work. In 1992, a bunch of us created the Global Network Against Weapons of Nuclear Power in Space that I coordinate today. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That is a great story, Bruce. Thank you so much for sticking to all of your very important work. Peace activists can easily get burnt out, because it seems that the Pentagon, the weapons profiteers, and the corporate media are all such big monsters that they can never stop them. So Bruce, how do you keep poking away at those windmills? How do you keep going and going and going? What is your big secret?
First of all, I'm very stubborn. Second, I grew up a young patriot, living on military bases, went to schools behind the gates on the base, was indoctrinated in all kinds of military stuff, as you can imagine. As a kid growing up, two things on my wall in my bedroom: the crucifix and a huge military plane that my stepfather gave me when I was a young boy. So this is where I got my start. And then being in the Air Force, as I said earlier, and being exposed to the GI resistance movement, and then finally reading the Pentagon papers, the government's secret history of the Vietnam War, how they lied to the people, they lied to the Congress, they lied to the media, they lied to everybody in order to create the war. And I read that while in the military, and I was devastated by it. Everything I'd been taught, everything I'd been told was lies. And so in all the years of my work since, I see the same story. They call it modus operandi. Every criminal syndicate has a way of repeating their bad behavior. And that's what these people do. They keep lying all the time about everything. Whether it was Iraq, weapons of mass destruction, whether it's Russia or China, they want to take over the whole world. We got to stand up. No, it's all lies. And now I see it. And that really pisses me off. And that drives me. And then thirdly, in 1989, there was a plutonium launch from Kennedy Space Center in Florida at Cape Canaveral, carrying plutonium on board, and I was organizing protest. And there was a delay. As it turned out, we later learned that Julian Assange, his first hacking experience, he hacked into the NASA computers and shut down the Galileo launch for a week. And so every day I would bring people there, and media's all there from all over the world, nothing to do. And so we'd do a press conference every single day. And we got a lot of media all over the world opposing the launch of plutonium into space. What if there's an accident on launch and the plutonium spreads all over Florida, 60-mile radius, their environmental impact statement said. They'd have to remove all the animals, the vegetation, the buildings, the top half-inch of soil, because everything would be radioactive for thousands of years. And so one day I came home from there, and my son is at the door. He's 9 years old, and he's got a gas mask on. And he said, in his most serious voice, "Dad, don't worry, it's okay. But if Galileo blows up, I could just wear this for the rest of my life." And it was in that moment I said, "Bruce Gagnon, don't you ever think about diverting your path. Don't you ever consider stopping this work. What about the future generations? Protect them."
Bruce, my amigo, thank you for explaining those profound personal reasons for your strong commitment to peace. You are no doubt a very super serious guy, and you are going to keep fighting the windmills, no matter what. But I also think that you understand that activists also need to laugh, and that we need to assume fun too. But there are still some who say that considering how extreme global problems are, that we have to focus on not getting distracted from our very serious work. But do you think about this difficult conundrum? When there is such terrible pain and suffering all around the planet, is it wrong to try to harness the power of laughter to fight against the windmills?
Gotta laugh sometimes, right? Otherwise you go nuts. I mean, what's the difference between me and you and the crazies running Washington and NATO? And I don't want to be like that. And so satire and cartoons and having a good laugh now and then is important to keep your sanity, to keep your focus. So I believe in it. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be interviewed by you. You've come back from the dead and you're now living and educating people in this wonderful show that you have.
You need to get serious and drop all of this ridiculously surreal satire. Just stick to the straight facts. Forget all the animated goofiness and get the frick down to business. Humor never got nobody nowhere.
Thank you for being such a great sport. I am trying now for something completely different.
Quixote News Network.